It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play. Like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And so the story goes. It happened on a dark, cold November night. Mist, born in the surrounding woods, lay blanketed, thick and impenetrable along the tracks. Other than the buzzing sizzle of an icy breeze whistling through the trees, all was silent. All was still. The lone figure of the rail worker, invisible in the fog, made his way along the tracks, performing his regular rounds to check for debris or any other safety hazard the next train might encounter upon its arrival. It's hard to know for sure how it happened. Some say he was on the train itself when he lost his footing and fell beneath the moving wheels. Some say he fell from the platform and lost consciousness when his head hit against the rails. But others say he was simply doing his job, and tragedy struck. Bent down in the dark, closely inspecting, the night watchman, whose responsibility it was to signal all approaching trains with his lantern, failed to notice the incoming locomotive. It came early and all too fast. As quickly as he could, he jumped from the tracks, but not quickly enough, as the rushing metal behemoth caught hold of his sleeve, tearing his left arm from his body. The man would survive, for a time, living alone in the woods somewhere near the tracks. He would spend the rest of his days bitter and angry about the accident. It is said he was often seen walking the tracks at night, obsessed about the wrong life had dealt him, searching for his lost arm, pacing back and forth by the light of his lantern, swinging side to side from the sharp hook he wore in place of his missing hand. In the years that followed his death, Long Valley locals would report strange occurrences near the old tracks, a freezing presence by something unseen, the sound of faint yet approaching footsteps in the dark, a metallic clink of something dragged against the rails. But the most well-known occurrence was the light, reported by many. A flickering red-amber glow bouncing from side to side that grows brighter as it approaches, disappearing in an instant, before reappearing some ways down the tracks. Legend has it, the hooker man continues to pace in the afterlife, lantern at his side, searching in vain for his missing arm. Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. Ghostlights, a phenomenon reported around the world. It is cross-cultural. It spans generations. Steeped in local legend and mystery, this phenomenon has a lasting impact on the communities it frequents. Unlike the majority of personal accounts of strange lights zipping through the sky, often contributing to the UFO debate, these particular lights I will be discussing today have not successfully been chalked up to folks' imaginations or visions had in drunken stupors, because these lights, this phenomenon, is quite real, undeniably so. Many communities have embraced their reality to the point they offer nearby locations where the curious may wait and watch for them. Many scientific investigations have been launched to examine and document said lights. And many a logical explanation has come of these investigations, from light refractions to swamp gas to ball lightning, and so on. But there still remains a bit of mystery, even in the most thoroughly investigated cases of the ghostlights. Whether it is a supernatural reason behind them or a scientific explanation, there is still a portion of understanding this phenomenon that eludes both sides. Ghostlights, spooklights, will-o'-the-wisp. We will dive into the mystery in just a moment. I mentioned on the last solo episode that I would recap my Halloween investigation at St. Ignatius Hospital in Colfax, Washington. Bad news bears, it is appearing that we did not capture any EVP evidence during our stay. Makes it kind of tough when your otherwise perfectly functioning camera mics, both of them, did not function at all. They were sure turned on, ready to go. Didn't realize this kind of major issue until we went to review the video. Thankfully, I was also recording some sound on our digital recorder, just not enough to capture any ghostly voices. A little disappointed. However, we did capture a couple of interesting light anomalies. I will be sharing those to Patreon in the coming week. If you are interested in seeing them, join as a free member. Then see all of the other cool stuff we got going over there. Then hopefully decide to stay permanently for as low as $1. But for you guys now, I will share some of the experiences Lee and I had. We had some crazy malfunctioning with the REM pod for the first half of the investigation. When we finally went to the guide to trade it out for another, thinking, maybe it's got a loose wire or something, it worked perfectly fine for her. Could be chalked up to user error, perhaps. But two very distinct experiences we had, not due to malfunctions of equipment, not due to operator error. We once again picked up the scent of rose perfume right outside of Rose's room. This time, sans pee, thankfully. Maybe Rose was a little less irate on this occasion. This smell, it's quite strong. It's a real scent. It's not just something I'm picking up with my psychic nose or anything weird like that, if anyone is wondering that. On another floor, I also picked up on cigarette smoke. It was just inside of this patient's room who was a known smoker, like 50 years ago. Kind of interesting, Lee was standing right beside me. Couldn't smell a thing. Which was very odd because it also was quite strong. And that's basically it. It was a little quieter than other investigations that we've had, and that is okay. That is the nature of the beast. Most of the time, you don't get too much activity. Now, my favorite part of the night was at the very end. I mentioned to one of the guides that I host this podcast, and I was invited to add my name to this door down at the building's entrance. Got to looking at some of the other shows and names that are on that door and totally did not have imposter syndrome as I added my own. Hey, Grave Talks, Morbid, Ghost Adventures. How do you do, fellow kids? All right. Let's get to our task at hand, shall we? Ghostlights. It's a real thing. They are really being seen and photographed and videoed. What the heck are they? Are they the intelligent, spiritual energy of a person long gone? The residual energy of someone's lantern or torch? The physical manifestation of someone's tragic end, doomed to walk the same grounds forever as a glowing orb? Or are they simply the result of geophysical changes and magnetic electrical processes that we can't fully understand? Whatever they are not up for debate. Will-o'-the-wisp is often used interchangeably with ghost or spooklight. But for our purposes today, due to scientists being willing to call the ignition of swamp gas by this moniker, I will refer to the scientifically described phenomenon as will-o'-the-wisp, and save all of the fun names for the more magical, mystical possibilities. And there have been a lot of fun names attributed to it. Ghost candles, friars' lanterns, spunky. I'm not sure what's up with that one, but it has been called that before. Will-o'-the-wisp is often described as small, bluish-hued flames or amorphous, globule-like lights appearing and disappearing, dancing across the terrain. Often, they are seen in swamps, marshes, deserted forests, and desolate graveyards. Will-o'-the-wisp is attributed to swamp gas. For any listeners who stuck with me through the season on UFOs, I would like you to sit up, take a sip of coffee, open up your ears, and prepare to be as mad as I was that UFO sightings were ever attributed to swamp gas. Because, a will-o'-the-wisp requires certain ingredients. Why is it most often seen in swampy, wet environments? Because it requires organic, decomposing matter. Dead plants, dead animals, dead things, also under anaerobic or low oxygen conditions. This decomposition can produce various gases, including methane, phosphine, and diphosphane. Methane is the primary component of swamp gas, though phosphine and diphosphane are less common, but still very significant because they can act as the pilot light, igniting the methane. Now, why would you need one gas to light another one? Does that even make sense? Yes, because methane has a high auto-ignition temperature, meaning it requires a substantial heat source in order to ignite. Unless it buddies up to phosphine, which is a more readily ignitable gas. But once the methane is alighted, a small, color-hued, flickering flame effect can be witnessed. The will-o'-the-wisp is small, ordinarily no bigger than your hand. Unlike UFOs, it is unpredictable in its movements, leading many throughout history to attribute a more eerie, ghostly nature to them, having mistaken their dancing, jumping movements, appearances, and quick disappearances to some form of intelligence from beyond. But alas, the movement and flickering about is slave to the nature that surrounds it. The wind, sudden drafts, if more than one pocket of gas exists nearby, and differences in gas flow. The dancing and skipping across the water effect is attained when multiple pockets of gas bubbles are a-bubbling, and the flame can essentially hop itself across the swamp or marsh. Otherwise, it is stuck in one location or within the boundaries of its environmental conditions. It can only go where the gas will take it, unlike UFOs, which go wherever the hell they want. It also is not seen for very long. The life of the will-o'-the-wisp flame is very much dependent on how much gas it has at its disposal to burn. So, unless there is a big old bubble of methane about to rise and just enough phosphine to light it, you are looking at a light show of maybe a couple of seconds to a minute or so. Unlike UFOs, which will stare you down, berate your very soul, pluck you from this planet, and leave radiation everywhere. You see why this is making me a little irate? This is not the point I wanted to argue in this one, but it was inevitable. Back to Ghostlights. The magical, mystical phenomenon. Now, I have seen quite a few distinctions, but the one that stuck out to me like a sore thumb. People report seeing a ball of light feet from the ground, not a small flickering flame at ground level. Before we move on, I would just like to reiterate, for the record, and in case you missed it, the will-o'-the-wisp has been reported in graveyards, especially when the ground is damp. It's not a fun thought, but according to the scientific conditions for swamp gas to form and spontaneous ignition, there's a lot of decomposing going on there. Graveyards are very conducive to the phenomenon. I mean, if you don't want to be weirded all the way out, maybe just avoid cemeteries right after it's rained. That's all I'm saying. But all of that being said, ghost lights have been attributed to swamp gas, when it's clear to me, based on most of the reports of self-contained glowing orbs appearing in all colors, lasting for well over a couple of minutes, in locations not conducive to will-o'-the-wisp creation, that it needs to no longer be attributed to it, because it is something different. And that's not to say will-o'-the-wisps aren't absolutely awe-inspiring and even beautiful. It really must be a sight to behold. Pretty strange looking, I imagine. Much like other natural wonders of our world, like bugs that glow, those circle clouds that look like flying saucers, ball lightning. Speaking of ball lightning, let's touch on why and when ghost lights could and could not be ball lightning. And then we are going to look at a case of the lights. Ball lightning has been reported worldwide, but most frequently in the US, China, Europe, South America, and Australia, in areas of each that are prone to high thunder and lightning storm activity. It is a rare natural phenomenon that has been reported for centuries that scientists still do not quite have an answer for, because for a very long time, like most of science's life, they thought people were hallucinating or making it up. But now that they do know it's a real phenomenon, they do have some very interesting theories as to why it forms. In 2014, Chinese scientists were actually able to not just capture ball lightning on film, but on spectrograph. Based on their readings, they discovered the ball lightning they had witnessed was made up of the elements silicon, iron, and calcium. In other words, dirt. Which is evidence of the original theory by chemist John Abrahamson in 1999 that when lightning hits the ground, It stores energy in silicon nanoparticles in the soil, and the impact of the lightning ejects those stored particles up into the air, where they combine with oxygen and carbon to create a glowing, fiery ball. See, who said chemistry was boring? It's not. Ball lightning could also be trapped microwave radiation in a plasma bubble following a strike. This would create what looks like a glowing orb. This theory would help explain reports from people who have witnessed ball lightning passing through walls and closed doors and windows, because it is just a ball of radiation, which also means the ball lightning the Chinese scientists discovered is still up for debate, or is a different species of the phenomenon. Because that kind, I think, would not be able to travel through panes of glass, wood. So yeah, maybe there are different kinds. Makes it kind of hard to nail down. Ball lightning, without a doubt, is most often reported during thunderstorms and nearby a lightning strike. However, it has, on even rarer occasions, been reported without a storm present, and even inside people's homes. It has been reported in a variety of colors, including red, orange, yellow, blue, white, and purple, and can range in intensity from very dim to very, very bright. Its size can span to just a couple of inches to the size of a beach ball, and its movements have proven to be unpredictable. It is a form of lightning, electricity. It hovers, it darts, it bounces, and can be visible for a very short amount of time before it disappears, at times releasing a popping or explosion sound. People who have been in the vicinity of ball lightning have also reported smelling ozone and sulfur after it disappears. So, ball lightning sounds like a relatively good explanation for ghostlights, right? For the most part, yeah, actually. I think it accounts for some, but it can't account for all, for the following reasons. There are multiple accounts of people who have claimed to be close enough to the ghost light to touch it. And they did. And they didn't immediately turn into a crispy human nugget. Again, ball lightning is a form of lightning, and we don't often touch lightning and live to tell the tale. Those claiming to have touched it, the Ghostlights, reported a staticky shock feeling. Seems pretty mild. Ghostlights have occasionally been reported in areas that should not be conducive to ball lightning production. Deserts, dry, arid climates, etc. Ghostlights have also been reported when there are no atmospheric meteorological changes to support the formation of a lightning ball. 0 rain, 0 thunder, 0 lightning. Yes, this does happen with what is thought to be ball lightning, but rarer than the formation of ball lightning itself are these stories that it happened in places and conditions that it shouldn't. This in itself is not an indicator of something supernatural over something meteorological, but it's also not an indicator. Does that make sense? Duration. Like will-o'-the-wisp, ball lightning is not long-lasting. Most sightings range between a couple of seconds up to a minute. It is highly unusual for this phenomenon to be reported lasting any longer than that. Many ghostlight accounts have been reported to last much longer than that. And finally, I have mentioned this a few times, but the rarity of the natural phenomenon of ball lightning should be the indicator that it does not explain the ghostlight phenomenon. It is said ball lightning is exceedingly rare. So, why are people consistently claiming to see these lights? Why can folks go to locations known for these lights and then sit waiting until they inevitably and reliably appear? Like Marfa, Texas, or Brown Mountain.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. And now I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
The Brown Mountain Lights have quite the consistent phenomenon on their hands and quite the grab bag of explanations put forth to explain it. Beliefs about Brown Mountain run the full spectrum of the supernatural, conspiratorial, and scientific scales. Conspiratorially speaking, some believe there is a military base located beneath the mountain. Folks believe top-secret military exercises are taking place in the area. Some have reported being harassed by men in black-type characters and witnessing Humvees driving into the forest and then suddenly vanishing, as if disappearing into some camouflaged tunnel into the base. Supernaturally speaking, some believe, similar to Mount Shasta in California, that Brown Mountain is a vortex of spiritual energy, healing energy, and is home to strange beings and creatures, energetic and otherwise. Fairies and other little people, interdimensional beings, and a pumpkin man. Just going to leave that one there. Some hold that the lights themselves are conscious beings of energy who live inside of the mountain. The belief in Brown Mountain being a source of crazy energy it's actually not wrong. While there are only reports and hearsay of pilots who claim their compasses went haywire while flying over it, there is scientifically documented evidence of unusually high electromagnetic frequencies that are occurring. We will revisit that in just a moment. Some believe it isn't a military base located beneath the mountain, but an alien base. And the lights are very much the product of UFO activity. In 1965, U.S. congressional candidate and UFO researcher Ralph Lale claimed he was in telepathic communication with the lights. That communication led him to a hidden cave filled with crystals and aliens. These friendly ET from the planet Pawam would abduct Mr. Lale, taking him to space multiple times, and would advise him on how humanity needed to shape up in order to save our planet. In his connection with these beings, he would come to possess a mummified corpse of one, which he kept in the back of his local rock shop. No one knows what came of the mummy following Mr. Lale's death. But even today, there are numerous local legends that will tell you exactly what the lights are. They are ghosts, but of course, according to Cherokee legend, the lights have been seen for hundreds of years. Centuries ago, an especially brutal battle between the Cherokee and Catawba Indians took place. Many would be lost. The night following the bloodshed, the mourning maidens of the tribe scoured the ridge for bodies of their lost loved ones, torches in hand, as they searched through the dark wilderness. Their lights can still be seen to this day. Another legend tells of a local plantation owner in the 1800s who ventured onto the mountain to hunt. When he failed to return, one of his slaves took up a lantern and scoured the ridge in search. Neither he nor the plantation owner would ever be seen again. Some say you can still see the lantern making its way through the trees at night. And yet another legend speaks of a man who murdered his wife and child and buried them in secret on the mountain. Not long after was when the lights began appearing, perhaps trying to lead people to their hidden graves. Legends do add an air of mystery to the incredible phenomenon taking place over there, and do go back quite a ways. But the first official documentation of said lights wouldn't take place until September 24th, 1913, in the Charlotte Observer. And this article references investigations of the lights having preceded that moment, saying, quote, "The mysterious light that is seen just above the horizon almost every night is still baffling all investigators. All theories as to its origin or nature have either been exploded or fall through from lack of evidence to support them." So by this point in 1913, they were already thinking about and pondering them, already investigating what they could be. And that is a detail that stuck out to me, because one of the skeptical beliefs about these lights are that they are reflections or refractions of train and car headlights from a distance. That is all well and good, and certainly has explained some cases of well-known ghost lights. But let's keep it in perspective that cars were still relatively new to the area. It's estimated by 1900 there were as many as 50 whole cars in the state of North Carolina. So while sales, of course, went up from there, there were still not that many. See, I'm not arguing that these lights preceded the automobile, but I am arguing that there just were not enough cars on the road at that time to support the amount of lights and the rate at which they were being witnessed. The article continues. It looks much like a toy fire balloon, a distinct ball with no atmosphere about it. It is much smaller than the full moon, much larger than any star, and fiery red. The Brown Mountain Lights still are reported to come in a variety of colors. Many have scoffed at this spooky thing, and those members of the Morganton Fishing Club who first saw it more than 2 years ago were laughed at and accused of seeing things at night. See? Documentation that sightings were taking place 2 whole years before this, 1911, when cars were even less prevalent. Some have declared that it was some practical joker sending up a light to mystify people, but it would hardly be kept up for several years, nor would it appear miles apart within a few minutes. Ooh, ooky, spooky, dooky things going on over at Brown Mountain. Since these early days, the lights have been officially investigated numerous times. Once by the U.S. Weather Service, twice by the U.S. Geological Survey. The Smithsonian even took a crack at it. In the 70s and 80s, scientists from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory out of Tennessee, along with the Enigma Project, took a stab at analyzing the lights and surrounding area, though they were inconclusive as to the causation by the end. Most groups up to this point offered up at least partial scientifically based explanations for the Brown Mountain phenomenon, but not one single report had been able to account for all characteristics attributed to the lights. However, beginning in the year 1995, the League of Energy Materialization and Unexplained Phenomena Research, or LEMUR, gave it a go. And the evidence that they collected, science they conducted, and their final analysis that they gave following a 15-year-long study is pretty damn impressive. And I do believe that they did indeed come closest to solving the mystery. Lemur employed some rather interesting equipment for the sake of obtaining measurements and evidence. And I want to read off just a few of pieces of equipment, and you tell me if any of it sounds familiar at all. Tri-field meters, Gauss master EMF meter, extreme low frequency and very low frequency detectors, infrared thermometer, digital cameras, infrared cameras, electrostatic detectors. My ghost investigators listening, we've recently gone over a bunch of this equipment, so y'all should be familiar with what it is that these guys were trying to detect, what kinds of energy and frequencies. In addition to all of that, they also employed ground rods to measure electrical activity, spectroscope, Geiger counters, and other devices geared for measuring both AC and DC electricity. They covered a lot of their bases going into this and would team up with a former nuclear engineer from Oak Ridge National Laboratory, an engineer from NASA, a local geologist, and a forest researcher. With all of their equipment, all of their experts, and all of their time spent studying and taking measurements, here are some things they discovered. The lights can be seen via infrared even when invisible to the naked eye. At times, they were measured in infrared before being seen with the naked eye, before dropping once again back into infrared, showing they change frequencies throughout their duration. Lemur's photography specialist discovered after shooting IR 35mm film of the lights, both rolls of his prints were entirely overexposed, indicating a high amount of electromagnetic energy was being produced. And on many occasions, team members had measured both radio and electrostatic disturbances upon the appearance of the lights. It was also noted that the Geiger counter would go crazy when the lights appeared. One reading in August of 2003, noted by Lemur, maxed out 2 nights in a row. So what does all of this mean? It means when the lights are rockin', radiation and frequencies come a-knockin', or more accurately are a symptom of what is going on. Electricity flowing through the ground was measured. This had no explanation as to why there was current, but it still was measured and noted. Their very low frequency detector picked up a strong array of disturbances at night with or without the lights. It was also found that lights seemed to be more likely to be visible to the naked eye following a disruption to the magnetosphere due to solar activity. So that's a lot of frequency, electrical radiation stuff that appears to be taking place in regards to this phenomenon. But wait, there's more. Lemur includes in their report some coinciding information that lends itself to what I believe is an incredibly fascinating, awe-inspiring phenomenon taking place on Brown Mountain that is the result of something natural in origin. They found the lights were more easily observed following a rain. Clear observations of them often coincided with nearby forest fires And the big one, Brown Mountain is almost entirely surrounded by thrust faults and is heavily covered in quartz and magnetite. This fact alone is incredibly important for explaining a lot of this activity and the visibility of this phenomenon to begin with. Before we end on their hypothesis, based on all of their results, let's talk piezoelectric effect. Simply put, this is when quartz crystals and other certain materials in the ground are smushed about, creating electrical discharges. Both of the quartz and magnetite found on Brown Mountain would store electrical energy until a discharge occurs, meaning when they are shifted and smushed about. Here is their hypothesis as to what is going on. Water that runs throughout the mountain charges the layers of the quartz and magnetite, building a charge. At night, the mountain cools and contracts, aided in its flexibility by the numerous thrust faults that are located around it. This contraction on the quartz and magnetite results in electrical discharge. Winds whipping through the valley will also aid in the buildup of electrostatic charge. As discharges occur, the quartz resonances create overlapping frequencies, directly taken from their report. When numerous discharges occur simultaneously from various cliffs and rock overhangs, they sometimes intersect. These points of intersection create points of electrical momentum where one or more discharges swirl. These pivot points sometimes spin fast enough to oscillate at a rate in the visible electromagnetic spectrum. Once in the visible electromagnetic spectrum, the color changes as the frequency varies, and sometimes the frequency drops so low that it is only detectable in the infrared range. Therefore, the traditional lights are simply the only small visible portion of a much larger invisible discharge. Their appearance as self-contained spheres is an illusion. As a discharge occurs, sometimes lasting many seconds, the ball of light moves back and forth along the layers of discharge and usually winks out once the discharge is complete. More rarely, the pivot point or the perceived ball of light will rise with the shaft of discharge, appearing to strobe or pulsate with the spin as it floats upwards into the atmosphere. It is the belief of these researchers that plasma, the fourth state of matter, is what is being created here, being the resulting form produced by intersecting electrical discharges and hovering between said points of discharge. Plasma is also enhanced by fuel in the air, such as carbon produced by forest or campfires. Not necessary for it to form, but will make its appearance more luminous. Plasma, the researchers say, would not radiate a great deal of heat, revealing why these lights don't seem to set the mountain on fire, though I have to presume might feel a little staticky or give you a little shock should you touch it, if one were close enough. It's also stated, though, that if the final result of plasma is true, this would more clearly explain why they seem to move away from folks who advance on them and perhaps are attracted to folks who move away from them as the plasma energy interacts with the electric fields of the human body. So I am a little suspicious about the guy who said he got close enough to touch one, unless he really was dealing with another phenomenon entirely. That is a possibility. And that is actually where I want to leave our exploration of the Brown Mountain Lights, mostly solved, but a little open-ended. Because there are still accounts of sightings and interactions with these lights that do not add up. Lights lasting far longer than the short life of an electrical discharge. Lights at a distance seeming to intelligently interact with those on the ground. That comes from folks who used CE5 for contact. So those lights could very well be UFO activity and something different. The lights have also been reported in blue. There was some strange footage captured of the lights by one of the researchers reflecting the blue color. And when the attempt to recreate what was seen in this footage at Princeton Optics Lab was made, it was unsuccessful. Quote, "We basically went through all of the wavelengths, starting from ultraviolet all the way to the near infrared, and were not able to replicate the blue color. It is unexplained at this point." So here are the scientists admitting that there is still activity taking place that they cannot replicate, they cannot explain. So, yeah, there is still some weirdness afoot on Brown Mountain, is what I'm saying. Still a little mystery left to solve. But for the most part, oh my gosh, Lemur did such an incredible job. Very impressive. We are going to wrap today on another case that I found especially intriguing, especially credible, and it was never solved. Before that, here are a few other cases of the lights, which, some of you can still see today, reliably so. So if you are interested in seeing them for yourself, having the experience, make your way to these areas. Joplin, Missouri, technically, I do believe the lights are in Oklahoma. Lights have been seen along a road called the Devil's Promenade for a very long time. They are said to hover, move through fields, go up and down the road, last for minutes at a time, grow in intensity, split into 3 or 4 smaller lights. This one, though, has more than likely been debunked by refraction of headlights coming down the nearby Route 66. Still, very cool phenomenon. The Marfa lights near Marfa, Texas. The locals have come to celebrate these lights. It is a big draw for tourists, and you are more than likely to see them should you visit. So go there. Hesdalen lights in Norway are just insane looking. Much like Brown Mountain, quite the intense study of these lights has been conducted, and much like Brown Mountain, it's pretty certain a majority of the phenomenon can be explained via natural phenomena, though they still look crazy cool. And some folks do still report strange, unexplainable activity. These lights usually fall into the UFO bracket rather than ghost lights, but, still. The Min lights in Australia, of course. Those, I think, are some of the most well-known worldwide. I didn't need to mention those. But if ghost lights are of a special interest to you, I have also included for you in today's notes an extensive list to dig into. Most of them I have never heard of before, so not sure if they are still active. Many ghost lights were reported near train tracks, and it has been shown repeatedly that once the tracks were removed, many times the lights vanished along with them, which should make you wonder if the metal tracks were acting as some sort of conductor or antenna for electrical activity. Many on the list have been debunked, or at least claimed to be debunked, by ball lightning, headlight refraction, mirage, will-o'-the-wisp, piezoelectric effect. Our planet is a very strange place with strange natural phenomena taking place all of the time. For this episode, I got to look into numerous cases, and time again, once I understood the scientific explanation, and if it undoubtedly made sense for the area the lights are or were being seen, I'm okay just accepting that sometimes reality is stranger than the supernatural. Sometimes. And I always wind up skeptical about something unexpectedly during these seasons. 'Tis the life of a skeptical believer, you know. However, I will still admit when I don't think we have the full answer, the whole story, when I still hold out a little bit of wonder at something that's a bit more mysterious than swamp gas and atmospheric refractions. The story that keeps my doubt at bay for the entirety of the Ghostlight phenomenon took place in Maryland in 1952. Though locals claimed they had seen whatever this thing was for half a century prior. It was a clear, warm night, July 10th, 1952. Just before 10 p.m., Trooper Robert Burkhart and a sergeant of the Maryland State Police made their way along the quiet, dark, deserted backroads on routine patrol just west of Hebron. They made a smooth turn onto the mile-long tree-lined Church Street, immediately taking notice of light of oncoming traffic just down the road. It's either an old car with one dim light or a wagon lantern that should be red, the sergeant was quoted as saying later. As the two officers continued forward, so did the light from the opposite direction, beginning to rapidly close in on the distance. It was noticeable this light was veered into the exact middle of the road, as if aiming directly at the officers as they closed in. At the last moment, believing this to be another driver, having lost their ever-loving mind, Burkhart had to swerve out of the way and onto the shoulder, skidding to a stop. Both troopers stared at the suddenly halted light, now clearly visible in their headlights, not 20 feet from them. It was described around 10 inches in diameter and yellow. Burkhart restarted the patrol car and creeped it back onto the road, approaching the object. As he did, the object receded, keeping that 20 feet between them. The officers slightly accelerated, and so too did the object, matching their speed, keeping that distance. The troopers chased, continuing to accelerate, and at 40 miles per hour, the object, the light, suddenly vanished. On the following night, Burkhart would return to the area. This time he would be accompanied by 5 other officers. When they arrived, the light sat hovering above the same road as before, as if it were waiting. The officers pulled their cars close and exited their vehicles. An attempt to surround whatever this was would end unsuccessfully and abruptly as the light, now cornered, once again vanished, before suddenly reappearing in a nearby field. This kind of trickery was known to locals, who claimed to have encountered the light numerous times prior to this series of events in 52. Local Robert Gambrill, who had seen the light numerous times in his life, would tell a local paper, "The light played tricks. First it's in front of you, then it darts behind you," he said. Several days after these back-to-back encounters, a posse of folks, again including Burkhart, along with Lieutenant C.C. Sermon, were witnesses to the phenomenon. The Daily Times reported around 20 carloads of folks, including Officer Burkhart's wife, would become witness on this particular chase. The officers would pursue the light for over a half mile before it veered off the road at 50 miles an hour into a field, went dim, and disappeared. Police were baffled as to what this was, but vowed to the newspaper they would attempt to photograph it. that would not come to pass, as far as we know. An investigation decades later by the Enigma Project would uncover that a mandate from the Maryland State Police Headquarters had been issued shortly following this series of events that any further confrontations with the light be kept under wraps. The legends were many and well known. One legend told of a death occurring when the railroad was built. The light was the lantern of the man who had been killed. There was also a rumor of a murder in the nearby woods resulting from a gambling dispute. The victim now haunted the road. One legend states a black man had been hung and left to die. It was his spirit wandering, looking for the light of justice. And one more legend the locals knew of, a man had committed suicide, hanging himself in the nearby woods. His body would not be discovered until years later. It appears no one came looking for him. Sad, sad legends. According to many residents, sightings of the light would continue to occur off and on following this event. However, many believe that the light became defunct after a brief flurry of sightings in the 70s following the blacktopping of that original country road in 74. Because of this, one theory offered up was, of course, reflection of light off of dust from the original dirt road. The officers described it pretty specifically, though. Can you chase a ball of dust at 50 miles per hour? Another theory had something to do with a broken shard of glass being held by a raccoon on a low-hanging branch, but there's just a point when the urge to explain something away gets extremely stupid. So I don't know what to think about any of those legends without being able to look into Hebron's local archives to verify the stories. All I know is that whatever this beach ball-sized light was, it was intelligent. Many people did not just see it, but interacted with it, police officials included. And based on every scientific explanation I have covered today, if I can believe the behaviors described by multiple officers about this light, and I do, not one explains it. Isn't this an awesome ghost light? Makes you wonder, right? Well, makes me wonder. It's not a UFO. I mean, it is an unidentified flying object, but yeah, you know what I mean. Come on. So, what is it? What was it? I don't know. A mystery. That is for sure. It doesn't explain every other ghost light out there, but neither can science. Thus far. That's all I got for you today. Join me for a final note. Ghost light, ghost candles, spook light, spunky. I still don't know what's up with that one. I just saw it in an old newspaper clipping, and it's staying. I like it. Grave lights, fool's fire, earth lights. That is a good one, actually. Foxfire, jack-o'-lanterns, tons of names for the same phenomenon. Seen around the world, seen throughout time. If we go back to my walkthrough of UFO history, a lot of those encounters and sightings could more appropriately be put into the ghost light rather than alien-flown saucer category. They could. And we still see them today, many of which, yes, are easily, well, not easily, but are debunkable with science. You know, scientists really, really didn't want anything to do with this phenomenon. As I mentioned, they didn't believe what people were reporting. Hallucinations, they cried. And then, well, they just couldn't ignore this ghostlight reality any longer. And here we are. Something once thought paranormal, accepted as fact. Not entirely debunked, though. Not entirely. There's a space that science is holding here as yet to be determined. And I find that very interesting. Maybe that's why ghostlights aren't talked about nearly as much as other strange supernatural-based phenomena. It's an inconvenient, uncomfortable truth. Because science still does not have an answer, but cannot deny they are real. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please follow the show on social media at Paranormal Girl Pod. You can also find me at that handle on YouTube. Please subscribe while you are over there. I really, really appreciate it. If you would like to support the show with more than a follow on social, I cannot stress enough how important it is to share the show with friends you think would love it. This show, this format, is not for everyone. I absolutely know that. So, it is all about finding my niche, my people, my community. Anyone you know looking for this kind of education in the paranormal who can also appreciate a weirdo of a host, shoot him a link to your favorite episode. That, all by itself, is an incredible way to show support, and I sincerely appreciate it as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see y'all back here next Tuesday. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.
Kroger Delivery makes it easy to do your holiday shopping in a jingle. There might be a lot on your to-do list, but thanks to Kroger Delivery, you can get everything you need delivered straight to your door at the same great prices you'd find in store. Our refrigerated trucks always ensure that your groceries arrive fresh. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order of $75 or more and get free delivery with a Boost membership. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Hey, it is Ryan Seacrest. There's something so thrilling about playing Chumba Casino. Maybe it's the simple reminder that with a little luck, anything is possible. ChumbaCasino.com has hundreds of social casino-style games to choose from with new game releases each week. Play for free anytime, anywhere for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.